I'm looking here at your career, and you've done so many different things, um, but very few things are really like Star Trek. And my question is, what was different about the standard of makeup coming into Star Trek that you recognized as opposed to some of the other work that you've done on shows?
I think just for this show, it has such a huge history. I mean, there's so many different shows, so many different characters, and it's hard. It's hard to make everybody happy with that kind of stuff. It's like the design people go through so much work and so much backstories and everything. It's a totally different world than what I'm used to. You can work on a vampire show, and you're like, this is how the vampires look for this show, and everybody's fine because it's a one-off sort of thing. But you got a Ferengi, and all of a sudden they're doing a different episode, or it's 900 years in the future, and somebody doesn't look the same or doesn't have the same teeth, and there's a huge uproar. So it's harder on that, and not for me, mainly for the designers who create all the looks and stuff like that. It's very challenging for those guys. Coming up with stuff that the fans are going to be happy with,
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the Ferengi, because that was a point of contention in this last episode, was this Ferengi, and how much does that affect what you guys do when you get reactions from the fans? They're like, oh, we don't like that. That's not authentic, or that's not the way they're supposed to look. How much does that weigh on you, or does it affect the way you guys go forward, or do you make adjustments and say, okay, let's kind of use a more orangey color because that one was maybe too auburn or something? Do you make those kind of adjustments, or do you just keep going and sticking with what you're doing?
Like Glenn and Alchemy, who make all the prosthetics for Star Trek Discovery, they go back and forth. You see chain emails for days on what the color should be, how to adjust it. His ideas, the writer's ideas. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen for that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It is very difficult, with any of these new characters, time jumps, everything else. And I'm not involved in a lot of that design sort of stuff. I just see the chain emails, and I'm always like, Glenn, thank God I'm not on these chains with you, because that's a lot of. It's just like, can we slightly change the orange color, he doesn't have the freckles or whatever it may be, and it's hard to find to make everybody happy, really. Everybody tries their best, and again, with that many creative people in a room, it's a lot of work to come to a happy medium.
Mm-hmm. Sirach, when you were bringing up, oh, and by the way, everybody at home, I promise we're definitely going to talk about this episode because there's so much good stuff in this episode. We're definitely going to get to it. People are like, I thought it said episode 3 in this description. Oh, we definitely will, believe me. But Sirach, when you mentioned that Rocky's worked on a bunch of other projects, everybody that's watching right now and listening, Rocky also worked on season 3 of The Orville. And I cannot wait to ask you about that a little bit later. But I do want to finish up first on these email chains that you're talking about, because it really does help to remind those of us that are on the outside looking in just how many cooks are in this kitchen. It's not just 7 writers sitting in a room. It, like, the makeup department is almost like their own writer's room, because they're getting, their information from the producers and the writers. Then they're kind of writing and rewriting, and the production designers are writing and rewriting. The musicians, right? The wardrobe department, that's also phenomenal. And I've never heard a negative word about the production value of all of these departments. It's very clear and very obvious that, number one, Paramount is not skimping on the money to make these things. Maybe on the inside they are, but to us, it looks like they're throwing enough money to make a huge production. It's also clear that they have hired the best professionals and the most talented people. And it just must be such an exhilarating feeling when you're like looking through these emails and you're creating new things and you're saying, you know, what would be awesome is if we could do something like this, and you can do it and you can actually put that together. Has there ever been something that you guys, you just kind of threw something out there and said, well, maybe we could do this, or it's a far-fetched idea, but let's give it a try, and it just worked out great? Or are you always just kind of like working with things that you've already know work, if that makes sense?
I'm trying to think of how to answer that question. It's kind of both. You know, there's generally, by the time everything gets to us, everything's pretty much ironed out on how they want it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Glenn and the writers and the directors and everybody have gone. The executives have kind of ironed out what they want. But then when it gets to us, we'll do a makeup test. Certain things might work, they might not work. And that's when we go back to the drawing board, or, you know, more email chains will go out. They'll talk to Glenn. Hey, can we change this? I don't like whatever it may be. And then we kind of finagle things to make it work. But then there's usually another design process or paint process or something like that. For this show, you know, since it is a lot of it's based off of existing characters, there's not a lot of wiggle room, but there's sometimes little things you can adjust while you're doing makeup tests and stuff.
What are some of the problem areas that you run into? Because you mentioned the new adhesives and the new things that you have for application. Because I remember when we were doing the show, there would be certain problem areas on different aliens. I think, for example, the Ferengi, the Quark, would always have a problem with his nose being glued down properly at the edges. And so right before we roll camera, you know, usually somebody would look through the lens and say, hey, somebody get Rocky over here to touch down that nose because it's poking up so much. So what are some of the kind of touch up on-set problem areas that you're always kind of tending to?
The usual things. I mean, with Doug, he holds up amazing. Saru is always amazing. A lot of times their collars are so tight on all the performers. You can see like Gersha does such an amazing job with the costumes, but they're so tailored. They're so tight on the neck. So any movement throughout the day, sometimes it gets a little friction on some of the necks of the guys. Doug's makeup, we generally don't have to do a lot to. It's just the inside corner of his lips. Generally, it's the mouth, you know, and all these characters, it's the lips and the mouth and how it depends on how expressive they are and stuff like that too, and what is going to pop up. If they drank last night, if alcohol comes through their pores at all, if they have oily skin, you know. But generally, the mouth is the biggest problem area for the most part of these sort of makeups.
Mm-hmm. You know, that brings up a good point about Gersha. And by the way, we're constantly talking about the amazing work that she and the wardrobe department do. Sirach is a wardrobeologist, and he catches everything. And the wardrobe, I'm sure everybody knows the wardrobe is freaking incredible. Does the makeup department and the wardrobe department collaborate every once in a while, like or share notes, or just have any kind of interaction in that regard, or are they just two separate things that do their own thing?
I think again, by the time they work out the ideas, the design, and the Photoshop, going back and forth between everybody, you know, we'll go in with Gersha all the time and do fittings. You know, if there's a new cowl, they have to do measurements and stuff like that. Glenn might say, hey, there's a hairpiece that's going to cover this back part of somebody's head or something like that. Please watch out for high collars on somebody. So there is a collaborative effort every once in a while if it's something that's going to be affected by, you know, each other's work and stuff, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. All right.
Yeah, I love what I'm seeing on Discovery. Really quick question: the Ebronian, is that was the Ebronian that we saw in this episode? Choose to Live. It was this alien species that was going to be extinct. Ebronian. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome.
Was that any makeup or involved in that, or is that all like was that CGI or computer generated?
I haven't seen the episode yet. I'm assuming it's all CGI. I would have to see what it looks like because I haven't watched it yet. We were going to watch it tonight. But we didn't do any makeup on that. From my understanding, it was all the digital effects.
Okay, yeah, because we did.
That's a bummer because it looks like. I mean, it doesn't look like there's anybody in it, right?
Yeah,
maybe because it doesn't move. They don't move. So I just right now I was like, well, maybe I'll just pull up a picture so to refresh your memory. And well, I Googled a Bronian in Discovery, and this is what I got. So I guess that's the best we can do. That's not going to cut it, is it?
That's not our work. None of those guys are our work.
Yeah, but they kind of looked actually in a way. I've never seen the show, but if you've ever seen Falling Skies, the aliens that Doug Jones actually played in Falling Skies, Cochise, like they kind of looked like that, right? These big heads. I don't know if that recognized.
Oh, I know. I remember what you're talking about. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like in a cocoon
episode yet, but it's all digital effects.
Wow, it was really okay.
Very, very well done because I couldn't tell. I was like,
I couldn't.
What is that? I couldn't tell.
I was waiting for it to reach up.
I'm always amazed by the VFX on this show. I have to say they do an insane work, and I feel like they're definitely. Sometimes I feel like they don't get their acclaim because they do. Like we're sitting on these sets, sometimes you're like, what on earth are these guys going to do to make this come alive? Yeah. And you watch the episodes, and you're just like, wow, they do such phenomenal work. The VFX team and everything. I'm always blown away by the work that they create.
I do want to say in this episode also, first of all, we had a NAM today. Sirach, I don't know if you caught the NAM. We call NAMs non-appearance mentions. That's when somebody is not an actor and their character is not actually on screen, but they are mentioned. We feel like they should get credit still, even if they're not on IMDb, and they're not getting paid that day. The character was our good friend, Dr. Pollard. Wilson Cruz's character said, "Oh, Dr. Pollard will be here," something like that. And I was like, "Are we going to see her finally?" No, not yet. But good that she got a name. I also noticed in the bar scene, there was a bar or a lounge or something like that. The Ferengi was behind the bar, which was a nice touch, of course. Really, really beautiful bar, beautiful set with like little fireplaces. And there was a Lurian, which is Morn's alien. He was in a little cubby. I don't know if you know specifically what the Lurians are, Rocky. Have you worked on the Lurians themselves? That's like a full body thing.
Well, those guys, a lot of especially with COVID last year, a lot of things had changed. So a lot of those, like the Ferengi, the Lurian, a lot of those are like, they're designed to be background masks and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. to easy put things on and off because it was a very limited crew on certain sets and scenes, and for just the amount of people we could have in a trailer and stuff, and even fine to work with us. But those are masks that are there.
Okay.
Like very beautiful silicone masks that Alchemy and Glenn have designed.
So Alchemy,
so they require less time to prepare. It's just like more of a slip-on quick thing.
Yeah, because a lot of those guys don't have dialogue or anything, and they just wanted to establish some background aliens and everything. And without, again, with COVID and everything else, the number of people we could process going through a trailer, a lot of things had changed last season. So they had to kind of figure out a quick way to get people on camera, even if it's just background shapes and recognizable forms and stuff. So just a slip-on silicone mask, paint the eyes, paint the mouth. Some of them have like little blenders and stuff around the eyes if we need to do that, or if they're going to feature them a little closer. But for the most part, last year was with some masks thrown in there.
That's really interesting because I'm always noticing, what shows and Discovery in particular are doing on screen that you can actually see how they adjusted to COVID, like less scenes with a ton of people is always the most obvious one, and a lot of little 2-person walk and talk things, But one thing I hadn't considered is the makeup department. How do they get less people's faces putting, makeup? And that's a way that your team has kind of figured out, or the producers have figured out, is, well, things that are more background, if we can make it more of a mask and not zoom in too much on them, then that's less time in the makeup chair, and that's less people that need to come on, and that's less exposure to each other. Are there other ways that we don't know about that your department specifically was affected by COVID?
There was just so much new stuff. I mean, really, Discovery was one of the first, from my understanding, like the producers were like, so what are they doing on Picard to deal with COVID? And what are they wearing? Are the prosthetic people wearing? And I'm like, we're back like months before Picard. We're the ones setting these rules.
You're the trailblazers.
Yeah. So for a big prosthetic show, we were one of the first, from what I've heard, to go back up and resume filming earlier on. So there's a lot of things that we had to figure out, like how many people we could have in the trailer at a certain time. You got to be 6 feet apart. How many people can be in a station? Like you said, a lot of walk and talks. You can only have 2 actors, and you couldn't be this close. And in later episodes, you'll see a lot more background people, because things changed and progressed as the show went on, because it was such a long shoot. But earlier on, things were very limited in what we could have on set.
Wow.
Ryan, what's the name of that alien that has the blue fish head alien guy on this show? He's kind of like.
Are you talking about the Osnolus?
Oh, it's not.
I think
yeah. They've got like that big head, and there's one of them on the bridge usually.
Yeah.
Osnolus. There are like 2 of them, right?
Yeah, there's a purple one, and like a more orangish, burnt orange sort of one that's usually out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's not makeup, right? That's
that's a huge head.
That's another big mask that they created. See, I think she was there. I can't remember if she started season 1 or season 2 offhand.
I think when season 2.
I think so too. Yeah. But
not that I'm like a nerd that follows everything with Discovery.
Everything seems like a blur to me sometimes, so it's hard to remember with everything. So.
Yeah, and there were some scenes though that we do have a lot of different aliens in I feel like scenes that have, say, 6 Klingons or 6 Vulcans feel like they'd be easier than 6 different aliens, because then you can't just almost like conveyor belt them, like, okay, put all the ears on, I'm sure you don't do it that way, but like,
no, it's more or less like, sometimes it's like that. And again,
really,
those are easier things to do. And if you have, each big prosthetic makeup takes about 2 artists. So, having that number of people working at that time with COVID was very difficult. But a Vulcan or a Romulan or something like that, it's just ears and a forehead. It was much easier. So that's again how they try to figure out, well, what can we do in this duration of time with one artist and this spacing that we're supposed to abide by to continue shooting and everything. So.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Rocky, you were born in 78, same year as me, so we're both 78ers. And I saw here that in 2019 you did win an Emmy for your work on Discovery.
Wow.
Is that correct?
Wow.
Can you just talk a little bit about, being validated for your life's work and the, culminating into this achievement of being recognized in such a prestigious way?
We were all, definitely very honored. We were surprised because we were up against Game of Thrones. The previous year we lost to Game of Thrones. And so they were like announcing everything, and they're like, Game of Thrones and Star Trek Discovery. And we were like already clapping for Game of Thrones. Like, yeah, you guys killed it again. Amazing work. And then they called our name, and we're all like, wait, did they just say our name? And Glenn's like, get up, you guys, like, go up there. What are you doing? And we're like, holy cow, I can't believe they just called our name. This is the coolest thing ever. Who would have thought? Because there's so many for me, there's so many amazing shows and so many amazing artists, and just like the level of, for my field, for makeup effects, is just like every year it gets better and better and better and crazier stuff. So to be up there with these people who I admire, and it was definitely an honor for sure, because I'm like, wow, I can't believe we beat these guys, because in my book they're phenomenal. So it was definitely an honor, and we were all very thrilled and lucky to be a part of it. So it was a blast.
Do you think that there is anything that you can put your finger at to say it was probably this? I mean, would you say, was it Saru? Was it, what do you think it was that won you that race?
I think there's just a lot of characters, like there was a lot of makeup effects and different aliens and species and stuff like that. Sometimes I don't know really how they judge this stuff. I'm sure Glenn and some of these other guys know better. I just think there was a plethora of different species and stuff compared to a show that might just have zombies, or a show that might just have vampires, or whatever it may be. I think that was probably like, oh, look at this huge body of work that they accomplished on this TV show. So that's my guess.
Yeah.
So,
there was also, in this episode, there was also a scene, or a couple of scenes, in which they are putting together a body for the character Gray. And I just want to know, were you responsible? Did you work on Gray's Anatomy? Sorry, I just had to make that joke. But
oh god,
no, but I don't think so, right? There was no prosthetics there.
No, just the trill tattoos and stuff, right, on the side of the head.
Sorry, Sirach. Okay, it was a funny joke. It was a funny joke, and it was relevant to this episode.
It was all about the setup. Yeah, we noticed that also Guardian Z, who was talked about in this, is also a trill, right?
Yeah.
I did notice the spots there, but I just we hadn't heard of this character, so it was a little bit like, oh, who's this guy? And then I said, oh, he's a trill.